What's the most spooky fact you know? Story 1. After a guillotine capital punishment, there were records of optical sensors working anywhere from 15 to 30 seconds. That means the eyes still look around. Whether those are just twitches or there is still some synaptic activity, I don't know. It's not like anyone has come back after a guillotine capital punishment, but I find that extremely disturbing. I think there's a case of one prisoner being instructed to quickly blink after his beheading, if he could. The executioner cut off the guy's head, then picked it up and smacked his face. The guy blinked. Story 2. Cockroaches. They can sense changes in air pressure. They know you're coming before you open the door. They can fit through holes thick as a dime. They have white blood. There's at least 5 roaches you don't see for every roach you do see. They reproduce so quickly, they can evolve to gain immunities from poisons. Knows where you are, knows when you're sleeping or awake, able to squeeze through tight spaces, can't be easily seen, able to enter houses with ease. Confirmed. Santa is a cockroach. Story 3. I always used to imagine the inside of my body like the animations and diagrams they show you in school. But really, light is only permeable through only some layers of skin. So, in fact, it's just darkness. During nursing school, I got to sit in on a bronchoscopy. Later, I realized that not only was it the first time those cells had ever seen light, it was the first time anyone had seen those cells. Story 4. The sheer amount of empty space around us and within us. On a subatomic level, we are essentially made up of tiny wobbly particles, some of which exist in multiple places at the same time, all of which were born from one specific moment in time. Some atoms in my body may have also been some atoms in one of your distant relatives' bodies. Also, the farther we look into space, the farther back in time we are looking. Currently, we can only look so far because we can't see before the universe existed. Story 5. At any moment, a protein in your brain can just fold randomly and become an incurable, horrifically debilitating fatal prion disease. Examples include Kuru, random bouts of laughter, paralysis, and death less than a year after symptoms arise, and fatal familial insomnia, slow but inevitable inability to sleep leading to hallucinations, weight loss, and eventually your body just gives up. P.S. Sedation only hastens the disease. Also, they can have an incubation period of decades, so you might already have it anyway. Story 6. You can bounce radio waves off the moon and hear your transmission echo back about 2.5 seconds later. If the moon is rising or setting, so it's traveling either towards you or away from you, it'll be Doppler shifted, changing the pitch of what you hear. People are doing that right now, and with a big enough array of aerials and a sensitive enough receiver, you could hear them. Story 7. As revealed in 1975 in a congressional testimony, a type of gun was created by the CIA, which shot darts and resulted in a heart attack. On penetrating the skin, the dart left just a tiny red dot. The poison worked rapidly and denatured quickly afterwards, so that it was impossible to believe that the cause of the death was anything but unnatural. Story 8. To determine the treatment of frostbite, prisoners were taken outside in freezing weather and left with exposed arms, and periodically drenched with water until frozen solid. The arm was later amputated. The doctor would repeat the process on the victim's upper arm to the shoulder. After both arms were gone, the doctors moved on to the legs until only a head and torso remained. The victim was then used for plague and pathogen experiments. Story 9. The answer of a man when asked about whether ghosts are real or not. Once, at the Citadel, I came into an empty room and saw an empty chair, yet I knew a woman had been there only a moment before. The cushion was dented where she'd sat, the cloth was still warm, and her scent lingered in the air. If we leave our smells behind us when we leave a room, surely something of our souls must remain when we leave this life. Story 10. The inside of your body is dark. When we imagine our internal organs, we have a tendency to imagine them as pinkish, right? Like they are in anatomy illustrations. But if you were to go inside a human Fantastic Voyage style, right now, it would be pitch black darkness. If you are lucky, those organs will never see light. Story 11. Viruses may have arisen as rogue segments of another organism's DNA that managed to escape their host genome because they contained genes that encoded for semi-autonomous translocation, called transposons, in addition to a few other enzymes and structural proteins capable of forming a protective shell, the viral capsid. Story 12. That at any given moment when we look into space, we are looking at the past. Light takes so long to travel that seeing a supernova or anything of the sorts happened thousands of years ago. There could be an explosion happening right now in the universe, and we would never hear about it in our lifetime. Story 13. All of our electronics worldwide, all of them, could be wiped out within a second by a solar flare. Everything would be a bust. Computers, TV, smartphones, cars, medical equipment, planes, ships, everything electrical in our homes. The Carrington event. In the 19th century, the world experienced a solar event of unprecedented scale, called the Carrington event. After the astronomer who first identified and studied it, it took the form of a massive solar flare called a coronal mass ejection, CME. The CME bombarded the Earth with basically a galactic electromagnetic pulse, completely flattening the magnetosphere and immobilizing Earth's inherent electromagnetic shielding until it was over. Fortunately, at the time, Earth's electronic infrastructure was still in its infancy, although the event did cause telegraph wires to melt and telegraph machines themselves to catch fire. Then, in 2012, a CME of equal or greater magnitude than the Carrington event was recorded. It passed directly through the Earth's orbit, while we were on the other side of the sun. Imagine if we had been in the splash zone of something like that, with how vital our electronic infrastructure has become in our daily lives. Reddit and the internet would immediately cease to exist, as servers become fried and destroyed. Anyone connected to a life support machine would be dead, unless the life support techniques can be done manually or with analog technology. Satellites for communication, weather prediction, scientific study, GPS systems, and anything else man-made in orbit around Earth would be damaged to the point of useless space junk. It would be an apocalyptic level event, and it almost happened. The sun completes a rotation on its axis about once every 3 weeks. So if that CME happened either 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after it took place, well, the Earth would be a suddenly and dramatically very different place. Story 14. Probably how serious climate change is, and how little is being done to work towards adaptations, let alone preventative measures, which are largely too late. People talk about the next generation, but millennials will be aging in a world with no seafood, startlingly little biodiversity, poor quality of life on basic things, luxuries. Water shortages will become increasingly more common, as will previously thought extinct or rare illnesses. This is especially scary when you put it in the grander context of how things are going in the world. Not only are opportunities slim, but millennials are generally terrible decision makers when it comes to finances. So it's a double blow. Story 15. It's more cool than creepy, I suppose, but every one of you has existed in some form inside your grandmother's body. When she was pregnant with your mom, the little mom fetus had all of the eggs for her lifetime sitting there in her little fetal ovaries. One of those eggs was eventually fertilized to produce you. Story 16. There is this website called the Library of Babel that contains books with every combination of characters possible within the restraints, 200 pages per book. Because of this, somewhere in the library is detailed information about your entire life, death, and every other event that will happen in history, available for all to see. You just have to find it. Not really a fact per se, but spooky nonetheless. Story 17. That there are types of cancers which can spread from host to host, meaning that the cells of a long-dead host live on as cancer in new victims. Example given, the Tasmanian devil cancer. That you have a second brain in your gut that likely has a major impact on the way you think, on the way you feel, and on your mental health. But this isn't the spookiest part of it, because it's very possible that its activity is actually affected by the billions of bacteria that exist in your gut. Lastly, that your decisions can be detected in brain scans before you have made them, that certain decisions can be made for you via electrical stimulation of the brain, and that if you are asked why you did X, you will try to come up with a reason to explain your decision as if you made it. Story 18. If 1% of the world's population are psychopaths, then the USA, with 325.1 million people, has the potential of 3.2 million psychopaths, the same population as the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. China will have 14 million psychopaths, which is as many people in the country of Zimbabwe. Story 19. The universe is 13.8 billion years old, give or take. If we compress that into a year, with the Big Bang happening at midnight on January 1st, then the dinosaurs would be wiped out on December 29th, and modern humans would appear at 11:54 p.m. Christopher Columbus would sail across the Atlantic 1 second before midnight. This is the real reason why us modern humans haven't spotted aliens. The chance that they landed within the past 100,000 years is extremely minute. Story 20. Not much of a fact per se, but more of a thought I had. We are time travelers both living in the past and the future at the same time, as well as in the present. Just hear me out with this. If you define your life as what we experience, then you can say that your mind experiences everything the rest of your body does, with a tiny slight delay due to the information having to travel to your brain. Your physical body experiences the universe right now as it's happening, but at the same time from the perspective of your mind experiencing everything your body does. Your body actually experiences it just a tiny fraction in the future before your brain registers it as now. If your body were to be cut in half or a meteor hit you, except your brain, there would be a brief moment during which it had happened, but your mind will not have experienced it yet, and there is nothing you can do about it either. It's really scary to think about, but at the same time, kinda cool. Story 21. Every time you fly, drive a car, or ride a bicycle, it expands and contracts as the temperature rises and drops. The most scary and dramatic example would be the retired Concorde. Its skin reaches a temperature of 120 degrees Celsius, or 248 Fahrenheit, which expands the nose section by 10 inches. That happens to every aircraft, and they're expected to last 2 decades in active duty. Story 22. There is a black hole called Phoenix, and it is estimated to be 100 billion times the mass of our Sun, comparable to the mass of an entire galaxy. Its event horizon is 590 billion kilometers wide, or more than 100 times the distance from the Sun to Pluto, or about 1/16 of a light year wide. To get a visualization of how big that is on a human scale, let's shrink our solar system by 1 trillion times. The Sun would be 1 millimeter wide, and Pluto would be a little more than 5 meters away, and that black hole would be 590 meters wide. For reference, Alpha Centauri would be about 40 kilometers away at that scale. Story 23. The crew aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia was still alive for several minutes during the fatal and futile re-entry attempt. The first signs of trouble were observed at 8:53:46. More and more started to go wrong, but Mission Control was able to maintain communication through 8:59:32. Sometime after that, the shuttle entered a flat spin while traveling approximately Mach 15, which is enough to cause disorientation and very painful injury, but most likely not unconsciousness or death. Review of recovered data recordings shows that Commander Husband and Pilot McCool were still attempting to restore systems and recover control past 9:05. The first lethal event was depressurization, which occurred between 9:35 and 9:59. All that means that the crew was very much alive and very much fighting to regain control for more than 7 minutes, despite knowing that, realistically, their chances of success were pretty much zero. Story 24. A guy disappeared in my country. Everyone knew he died. Everyone knew who did it. But the guys were policemen, so the investigation was so ruined it became ridiculous. There are people on this planet who can intervene in the investigations made against them, decide to block them, and if you do something about it, no one will investigate when you will mysteriously vanish. Can't fathom to be so powerful but yet use this power to be so heartless. Story 25. When watching Monsters Inside Me, I discovered that individuals can still contract leprosy. While on a hunting excursion, two adolescents saw and removed a dead armadillo. The armadillo's blood got on his boots, which he wiped with his bare hands. This proved to be a near-fatal error, as the armadillo became infected with the bacteria that causes leprosy. He had to have surgery to remove damaged sections of his body. Leprosy still exists worldwide. These days, it's easily treatable. It's not highly contagious, and because it's not easily transmitted between people, they don't have to go into isolation while they are being treated. Story 26. Spiders, one of the most evolutionary advanced species on the planet. We kept killing them, and they began to get better at hiding. They can also convince us we have killed them when we haven't. Rain doesn't destroy their webs. Not even a pressured hose does anymore. Also forgot to mention, they can do nothing, sleep all day, and wake up to find food in their webs. They don't need to hunt or attack like almost every animal. Story 27. Never go downstream of a low-head dam. Actually, just don't go near one at all. They've earned the nickname the drowning machine. This is because the structure combined with the current creates an inescapable drowning zone of a rotating current. They are incredibly strong and nearly impossible to escape from. Should you fall in, no one will rescue you. It's just too dangerous. Story 28. The first known human cannibal was a Neanderthal whose victim's 100,000-year-old bones were discovered in Moyagursi, a cave in France. There have been sites where the act has occurred involving the cannibalism of children, leading some to speculate the act was not just done for food, but that it was done as a warning to rivals. Some anthropologists suggest that cannibalism was common in human societies as early as the Paleolithic. To this day, only a few countries have laws which explicitly criminalize the practice of cannibalism, and the act can still be found in isolated regions of 5 different countries. Story 29. There are several ways a body can decompose after you breathe your last breath. The most common is putrefaction, rotting. It starts when bacteria inside you start eating you up when they stop receiving food. Mummification is most famous because of ancient Egypt. Some Japanese monks mummified themselves through a ritual consisting of eating tree bark and drinking water from a specific water spring. Little did they know that the water was rich in arsenic, so they slowly poisoned themselves, so they killed all bacteria inside them as well. So no putrefaction was possible, and their bodies dried up in a meditation position. Devout Buddhists believe they're still alive, reducing their body functions near to zero. This practice is now forbidden in Japan. These mummifications are artificial, but one of the rarest mummification cases is in Guanajuato, Mexico. Their graveyard is so small that a perpetuity quote has to be paid. If the quote is not paid, the body is exhumed and cremated. But some of the bodies are found mummified. The causes are unknown because less than 1% of the bodies are mummified. Saponification may be the rarest one, and since I'm not a chemist, the hardest to explain. All bodies have fat. Some have more fat than others. This fat, if the conditions are adequate, starts a process called hydrolysis. This makes your body fat transform into soap. It is so rare that it is considered anomalous when it happens to a previously living body. Story 30. We don't really know reality. We only know our perception of reality. The sky isn't really blue. The gases in our atmosphere scatter the shorter wavelength frequencies of the visible light spectrum, that is, blue, indigo, and violet. Yet, we only see blue. The rest are still there. We just don't see it. There is a lot we don't see. There is a lot we don't hear. There is a lot we cannot perceive. Just imagine what else is out there, or rather, inside your house with you right now, perhaps dangling off the hairs over your forehead as you read this, that you can't see or hear or feel. When we consume psychoactive hallucinogenic substances, our perception of reality is distorted. The five senses are inadequate for describing the experience because we are able to perceive differently from what languages, and by extension, our own minds, have been developed to describe. There is a great overarching blackness, a mystery of the universe that you cannot know. We're all just walking around in the dark, unaware of everything. Also, a baculum is a bone that is absent in humans but present in other mammals. The blue whale is the largest animal species alive on Earth. They have baculums. Story 31. When writing my first urban fantasy book about a conspiracy to commit murder using a vampire to make it look like an accident, I researched how long it would take an unconscious human male to bleed out and die from a punctured jugular vein. I probably got put on a few watch lists over that one. I also know that male mallard ducks are serial rapists. I wish I didn't know that because I used to think they were cute. But probably worst of all, I've read Dianetics. Creepy doesn't even begin to describe L. Ron Hubbard and the cult he created. Story 32. The fact that we can only observe 5% of the universe is astonishing. The remaining 95% is a mystery, and we don't really know what it is. What makes it creepy is that dark matter and dark energy are not confined to distant corners of the universe. They are present everywhere, including here on Earth, and interact with us all the time. Story 33. Rogue planets and black holes don't have a parental star and start roaming around solar systems around the galaxy that has a sun. And rogue black holes also roam around, sucking everything it sees. Worst case scenario, a rogue planet will enter our solar system and cause a collision. We are definitely not going anywhere just by finding a habitable planet. We already messed up ours. Our galaxy is so big that it will take light years to get across or out of our galaxy to find another one. And no one will care if you keep saying save Earth or save water. Our planet will still be trashed, and we are all going to die.